was just craziness.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
tried to like shoehorn my way in there to get a photo during the Caitlyn press conference. That was morning, YouTubers.
Hi, YouTube.
Let's go. Yeah, blue sky. Here, here and get us rolling. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Thursday, February the 6th, about 10:15 a.m. Central Time here in icy Iowa City. Was fun getting my garbage cans to the curb this morning, Scott.
Yeah.
I literally slid with the garbage cans down the driveway to the end. Scott Doctorman from The Athletic is my co-host. It's not, is it, I'm hoping it's not your garbage day.
No, it was yesterday, or Monday into Tuesday for us. So I take it out on Monday nights. But yes, it's. I noticed the ice rink that was our driveway, and luckily the neighborhood. Once it got past about a block, it was fine, to drive. But this morning, but yeah, it was pretty rough for a few minutes there, just trying to get to the car.
Could have been worse. You always, when you hear the ice, you're like, oh no, no power, no what,
Yeah.
but we got off pretty easy in regards to and in relation to what we were told was coming. So we
Yeah.
made it out okay. Hopefully everybody else did as well. Um, I know I've had some people ask me about what's going on in my professional life at Hawkeye Nation, which is no more. And I talked about it briefly on the Mailbag podcast on Tuesday. I don't want to take a lot of time on here. You can go back and listen to that. But if you don't, I just want to go over it real quickly. And this also serves as me getting Scott up to speed as well, because we've been busy and haven't talked. We were at the game on Sunday against USC. I saw him at one point walking. He saw me down on the floor, and
Yeah.
we never hooked up because
Yeah.
that's the way it goes at these things. So this is kind of us catching up as well. So anyway, I no longer work for the people that currently own Hawkeye Nation. Does that mean I will never work at Hawkeye Nation again? I do not know. It depends on what the future of that URL, company, website, whatever happens to it. There's a chance that who knows? I could get involved again. When I left there in 2009, I didn't think I'd be back, and I was back there again in December of 2015 and up until this past month. So we'll see what happens there. This is the first time that John Miller or I have not been a part of Hawkeye Nation since its inception. And for those that don't know, give John his flowers now. He's the guy that went around with a wagon around Kinnick Stadium handing out newsletters to get Hawkeye Nation going and get that starting from a grassroots level and built it into what it was until the current owners basically decided they would run it into the ground, intentionally or not, and then bail on it when it was not making them any more money. So I won't name names and how we got here. Briefly, for me, 2020, fall of 2020, after football season, I think, after working my ass off on football season, I was told that my salary was going to be cut by about 55 to 60%, left me scrambling, landed on my feet. Thank Ryan Merkin at Your Prep Sports. Thank Pat Hardy at Hawkeye or at Hawk Fanatic. Special thanks to the people at Prep Network who have helped me make up the money that I lost then. Fast forward to January the 10th of this year, got a call from Joe Schmelka, former president of the Polk County Eye Club, who owns Hawkeye Nation, told me they were going dark. They could no longer pay me. I requested a week to get with John Miller to see if we could buy it. A lot of sentimental value there. Did not want to see Hawkeye Nation go dark. Dealt with them, found them to be not dealing in good faith in terms of selling the site. When we were finally able to get a number out of them, it was unrealistic and not worth what they want for it. And I believe they've been 8 days without content. So no Penn State Iowa wrestling, no Caitlyn Clark jersey retirement, no USC upset, none of that stuff. So I don't know what the future is of Hawkeye Nation. I am not going onto social media to whine about this or pander or any of that stuff. That said, if you have any work for a journalist that freelances, send it my way. I can write a little bit. I can take photos. I'm decent with video editing, all of that stuff. Send it my way. But that's kind of where things are at, Scott, to get you up to speed. It's been rough. It's been tough on the mental health. I'm at peace. Got some things rattling around in my head, some ideas, some potential business ventures here. I'm going to continue with Prep Network. I'm going to continue with Hawk Fanatic. And you can hopefully continue to listen to this podcast every Thursday morning and also the mailbag on Tuesdays and some other stuff. I've got a feature story about Isaiah Oliver, son of Dean Oliver, plays at Waukee Northwest. He's a wide receiver that was here for Junior Day last month. Talking to Isaiah and Dean just about going through that process. I covered Dean when he was here. I covered Dean when he was a freshman here.
Wow. Yeah. That's
That was
scary.
that was one the Iowa State game over there was one of the first games I remember covering here. The Iowa State his freshman year. But anyway, and I covered the team before that too. But cool story, and I want to keep doing stuff like that, Scott. Writing features, telling stories. That's why I got into this business. It wasn't to cover the University of Iowa. I'm not an Iowa fan, truth be told. I root for the guys that play there, that work their ass off and get out there every Saturday or Tuesday, Wednesday, every damn night of the week now in basketball. It used to be what, Tuesdays and Saturdays. Now it's every night of the week. Women's basketball, women's wrestling, all of that stuff. I love to tell stories, love to meet people, love to talk. That's the Hawkeyes to me. The Hawkeyes are the people that I've met in the last, since 1997 and the relationships that I've built. And I want to continue to do that on a certain level, but I also have been energized in getting back into prep coverage, and I want to continue to do that as well. Sorry, I've taken up way too much time here. There's too much Hawkeyes to talk about, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing every detail. I know this has been tough on you personally and professionally. So I wish you the best going forward, and glad to say that we're still doing this podcast after, I think this is right around our what, 5th year or something like that.
Started right around that time when they cut me back because they didn't want me to do podcast on Hawkeye Nation anymore because of obviously some of the material that was talked about on the podcast that summer and fall. So
Right.
I get it. I knew when I was doing what I was doing in 2020 that it could come with consequences. And again, at peace with that.
Yeah. So, but one added note, side note on what you said at the end there. When it comes to the one thing that I think I take away the most from what we do and have done 30 plus years in this business, most of which covering Iowa or people who are at Iowa, is the people. You build relationships with human beings. This isn't just you go to journalism school and you learn it a one way where this is the way it is. And then you realize life isn't that way. It's like, oh yeah, you go and you learn how to write a game story, and you're at a high school story, and the shortstop makes an error in the bottom of the seventh inning, and they lose a district championship game. Are you going to lead with that in a high school? If you're writing a high school story, you got to figure out there's empathy that's involved, and you're basically blaming a kid, for that, and it spills over into colleges when you're talking about a 19-year-old who may miss a field goal, on basketball or football to win or lose a game. You've got to, you put yourself in that position, and there's no layer, there's not as much of a layer as there is like at the pro level. Now they are getting compensated now. That does add to the scrutiny. And in my case, I don't have a problem throwing more scrutiny towards them for their performances based on if you're making high 6 figures or more. Sure. Yeah. You deserve a little more of that. But that said, they're still young adults. We get to know them in a lot of cases when they're in high school and they're recruits. I mean, you may have them start talking to them when they're 16 years old. Maybe I do when they commit, if I like, I remember like Cooper DeJean, opportune time. I remember going out there still during the COVID year, and he was a senior. And I remember going into OABCIG high school, Alphabet City High School, and talking to him and his parents and his coaches. And, he's just this kind of shy, young boy, if you will. And now here he is starting in the Super Bowl and, you know, adored by millions, frankly, because the Eagles fans love him too. And so you get to that point, and then in the future, who knows, 15 years down the road, Cooper DeJean could be back at Iowa, and we could be seeing him on a frequent basis, knowing that we've known him for more than half his life, from when he was a young person to now middle-aged adult. We're seeing it all the time. You mentioned Dean Oliver, growing up in that era, that Ryan Bowen, it was basically down the road for me in Fort Madison. I'm in Burlington, knocked us out of the district tournament in basketball my senior year. So seeing them at that level to now where all these people are, it's the relationships that matter ultimately in the end. And I'm that way with probably like the NFL too, probably more than ever now, where I grew up a Chicago Bears fan. I know you're a Jets fan. We want the best for our teams, but if they're playing the Detroit Lions and Sam Laporta catches a touchdown, I'm not going, damn Sam, or the 49ers and George Kittle, or AJ Epineza gets a sack or something like that. No, I mean, you're happy for the people because you got to know them as people. The teams, the pro teams are the commodities. So, yes. I look at it this way, that we're in the people business, sharing their stories, meeting them, and it's more than transactional. It's a relationship, and it goes a long way. And so, I hope for you, Rob, because you have been on the pulse of a lot of people whose stories aren't told, who are a lot of times, whether they're marginalized or they're not discussed or not written about, you are there for them and share their ideas and their thoughts. I hope you are, because I think you're a real important voice for the people of Iowa and for the people that you cover.
Appreciate that, Scott. And I've always appreciated your friendship and support through all of this, and look forward to continuing to be able to do this. And yeah, I covered LeVar Woods when he played here. So there you go. And now I've covered his son's recruitment. Yeah. And the same with Jason Manson and Abdul Hodge. So yeah, it's been a while. And again, I've enjoyed almost every minute of it. There certainly have been some times with the men's basketball program during one coach's tenure here when it wasn't very good off the court with some things that went on. And then other stuff, obviously 2020 with the football program sucked, but that's part of the deal, right? And you tell the good stories, you tell the bad stories, but just tell the stories and tell them accurately. And that's all people can ask of you. The story from Sunday, Scott, was man, could you have written that up better? Could Hollywood have written that up better? You're playing a team from Hollywood,
yeah.
And arguably the current face of women's basketball, or at least one of them, in Juju Watkins, fourth in the country, comes to your place, and you spring the upset. So awesome win for the Iowa women. And then after it, you honor the best player in program history, best athlete in Iowa history.
Yes.
It was weird, and I'll tie this back into me one more time, and then we'll roll on here. But when all this stuff went on, I'm like, do I still have the passion to do this, or have I lost any of it? No, man. Sunday was awesome.
Yeah, it really was. You, as you said, you could not have written a better day for Iowa women's basketball, the University of Iowa, than what you experienced on Sunday, and that is, first of all, you're honoring the greatest athlete in school history. You're honoring the greatest women's basketball player in history, probably the most iconic female sports face in the world. And she's in your arena, and and it's sold out, and tickets on the secondary market, or the cheapest one was $150. A lot of other ones were,
which was a bargain.
Yeah, right.
150 was a bargain to get in to see that.
And that was up at the top. I mean, that was like, so you're close to the bathroom, but far from the floor.
And she apologized in advance for what the prices are going to be in May.
Yeah, exactly.
When the fever.
Right. And she apologized, I know you spent a lot to get here. And I think that was pretty poignant too. But Filled to the rim. It was everybody was there way early.
Did you do the decibel thing? I was
Yes,
thinking about that when I was on the baseline. Is he doing that thing? What'd you
yeah.
get?
The second loudest I've ever recorded. It
Wow.
was with Sydney Falter's 3-pointer that went in 6-1, 118 decibels.
Wow.
Yeah. And there were several 117s as well. In fact, Taylor McCabe's first three went to 117. Lucy Olson's steal and finish, late in the fourth quarter, which pretty much said, okay, they're going to win this game. That one went to 117. So, and then consistently, a lot of the plays, especially in that amazing, 18-1 run or whatever it was, um, or 20-1 run, whatever
It
the
was a
score.
lot to
Yeah.
nothing. It was a
Yeah.
lot to one.
Yeah. Throughout, it was, in the 115, it was a fever pitch, and you could feel that momentum. And I know, but so much goes into this type of win. And, you throw in the recruits who are there, you throw in the opponent who is there, the fact that it's Sunday afternoon on Fox, national, you have
Bro, David Letterman was there,
David
man.
Letterman.
That's dude, I was that's surreal. When I
Yes.
saw him walk by, I'm like, what the heck am I going on?
Exactly. You look at just the recruits who are there, the best in the country
Yep.
were there to observe that. And then you throw on the team aspect that, yeah, they'd won two in a row, but they hadn't had a statement win. They'd had a lot of struggles. They knew they were playing a tough team, and the way they played, the way they performed, the way they persevered, because they gave it all up in the second quarter. It
Yeah.
was just they were down at halftime, and it was just like, oh boy, this is what I tweeted. It was fun while it lasted, which of course some people felt was cool after the game to say, to come after me or whatever. And I'm like, okay, you get blocked now. I'm not even gonna mess with you. If you're gonna do this shit, I'm sorry, stuff, I'm gonna block you. Forget it. And then but you throw all that in, and then Jan Jensen, this is her first year, and she's had some struggles. Lucy Olson, greatest game she's played in an Iowa uniform, a memorable game, no matter how the season comes out. People will remember that.
Yep.
I think that, I'm just going speed dialing through all this stuff.
No, this is all pertinent information.
You have as you said, the face of women's basketball, college women's basketball, in Juju Watkins, who had people wearing her T-shirt.
Yeah.
I saw one, I think it might have been a Ray Gun shirt that said, "I may live in Iowa, but I support Juju." You had a girl on the floor holding it up. She was cheered with 103 decibels in the starting lineup. What the hell? How does that happen? Lindsey Gottlieb keeping her team on the bench to watch the Caitlyn Clark ceremony. That to me, I wrote that the Caitlyn Clark effect today is that not only is women's basketball cool, but it's warm, meaning it's
Yeah.
the coolest thing to do. That's not just a condescending, oh, great, good effort, girls. We're proud of you. It's no, we're into it. And then, but you look at the way everybody treats one another in this sport, and that's perfection. That's the essence of
Supportive.
sport.
They're supportive. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, what
What's
maybe
good for the game?
yes.
Not what's good for me or just us as a team. What's good for the sport? How can we make this great for everybody? And Caitlyn is
Yeah.
at the forefront of that, which it all came together on Sunday.
Mhm. Exactly. I mean, she's there again, and her teammates, her former teammates who
Yep.
are as beloved locally as she is, not as recognizable, but as beloved. And Caitlyn ushered this era in. She made basketball cool, but when you see Lindsey Gottlieb saying, "We respect the game, we respect what she's done, what Lisa has done," and they honored that, and they were cheering for her after losing a game, a tough game on the road in Big Ten
Mhm.
play that may end up ultimately costing them the regular season championship, or at least a share of it. But yet they respect the game. And then Lisa, no better words were spoken that she said it to me at the end, which was, about supporting women's sports and that everybody's jumping on that bandwagon. She goes, it's not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And we've seen it with 3.2 million in ticket sales last year. That's going to go up just because it's still sold out. You saw it with full audience. That wasn't the case Tuesday, I can tell you that. You saw it
Were you
with
there Tuesday?
Yeah, I was there Tuesday.
Okay. We'll talk about that later, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll get to the bad news later with men's basketball and wrestling.
Right.
We're going to start this. We're going to uplift you, and then we're going to take you down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so there's, and then again, the opponent, and then the fact that Iowa fans, these are the true Iowa women's basketball fans cheering Juju Watkins, appreciative of a great talent and appreciative of a classy act by the USC coaches. And then, kudos to College for letting them work out there while they're on their trip. So it's beautiful. It's special, it's unique, and it's something that I really hope people recognize and is contagious, because it's the beauty of sport and it's the beauty of life married together to show us the way that things may be tough at times and in a lot of ways, but this is what it really matters in this world.
And the keys, I agree with you wholeheartedly and well said. The keys to that win, Scott, were kind of what we saw in bits and pieces throughout the season. Inconsistency. So they'd be good in one area and then have these lapses game to game within the games. But I mean, the hope is when you have so many new pieces and you lost so many important pieces that you gel as the season goes on. Now they have a chance to build off of an enormous win. I haven't looked today what they are in the net. I know it was low 30s last time I looked, in the 30 range. So comfortably or comfortably on the right side of the bubble. We'll see kind of what happens from here. Minnesota at Minnesota tonight. You can't have a letdown in this league, and you can't rest on a USC victory because you have more work to do. And we know, Scott, how Minnesota feels about Iowa. And now Iowa got its attention even more with that win on Sunday. So you're going to go there tonight, 7 o'clock. Is it Big Ten Network?
Yeah, 7 on BTN.
7 on BTN. And you're going into into a hostile environment. And this is going to take a little bit more than that home crowd that we just talked about and having the decibels behind you. You're going to have people go on the opposite. There'll be Iowa fans there, but this is an important game for the Hawkeyes.
No question. And you've got momentum because you've won 3 straight. And you've won this big signature game, but you can't let it go. You can't just say, well, go up there flat, lose. It strips away that momentum on the floor. Now, the fans, I think they'll understand if you lose and they'll move on, but you don't want that for your team. Mm-hmm. You've got a challenging schedule the rest of the way, and I would say now, even though they're 5-6 in the Big Ten and they're 15-7 overall, if the season ended today, they'd be in the tournament. They'd be a lower seed. They'd be traveling for sure, but that it's still, you don't want to finish this way, and because the rest of the schedule is not easy. This is a very challenging game. So is the next one, and I look at
that's Nebraska on Monday for those that don't have the schedule in front of them.
Right. And, I look at this, that they have 7 games left. 2 are layups in basketball parlance. Rutgers and Wisconsin at home. If you lose those games, you probably shouldn't go to the NCAA tournament, to be honest with you. So that puts you at 7 wins out of 18, but you don't want to be 7-11 and because then you're really then you got to do something in the tournament, and you got to Big Ten tournament and really put a statement at the end. There are 2 games that I think that will be very, very challenging to win along the lines of USC, and lightning doesn't always strike twice in this. That's at Ohio State on President's Day morning. It's a President's Day morning game, President's Day. Yeah. And then UCLA at home. I think Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice are going to be challenging to defend. So, maybe they get up for that game too. I don't know, but I'll just say this: that those are 4 games that you're likely to split 2-2. So what you do with the other 3 is really going to determine, where you end up in the standings, how, where you're going to end up in the Big Ten tournament seeding, but also whether you get in comfortably into the NCAA tournament as like a 10 seed or a 9 seed, or whether or not you're sweating it out on Selection Sunday. And that starts with this 2-game stretch here at Minnesota tonight and then Nebraska on Monday. And I kind of crunched the numbers of these teams. They're even, Iowa and these 2 teams, even though record wise they're a little behind. But Minnesota, for instance, is not very good when it comes to field goal percentage. They're 15th in the Big Ten. So offensively, you might have some chances to slow them down. But what they are really good at is assisted turnover ratio. So they value the basketball. So they're not really great shooters, but they do value the basketball. And the other thing is that they're last by a long shot in blocks per game. So you're not going to face what you did on Sunday, which if you drive the lane, you're going to get blocked. That happened a lot. And so going up there, you've got to me, I think what it tells you is Iowa has struggled a little bit in valuing the basketball on the possessions. Mm-hmm. Their turnovers have been bad. We saw it in the second quarter, but all year that they've just turned it over way too much. You slow down the pace, be more precise with your passes. Don't do anything. You can be aggressive, but don't be crazy. That to me is going to be whether or not you win this game. Because if they have 8 turnovers and you have 18, that's 10 more possessions you gave them for no reason. And so that to me is going to be the hallmark of this game tonight, because Iowa player for player matches up just fine. Mm-hmm. Iowa could win this game if the turnovers are even and they shoot the ball as well as possible. And not like over the top, just shoot the ball well.
Especially at the free throw line.
Yeah, that's another one.
Better, but they were better on Sunday, and that helped them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's look here in the fourth quarter, they were what 7 for 7, and then in the third quarter 9 of 13. That's not like the 1 for 7 or 1 for 6 or whatever it was that I think it was Lucy Olson had against Nebraska, maybe. Can't remember. Nebraska and Oregon kind of the scenario plays out. So I think overall that this is, in some ways, if you're Jan, you want this. That now you're on the road. It's a few days removed, not just like 2 days removed. It's not a Wednesday, it's a Thursday. So you can kind of put that in the rearview mirror. You can focus on a team that is a rival and has been. And she mentioned it after the game, and I thought really smartly so, is they know what we've done to them in the past. And last year, I mean, Taylor McCabe even tweeting after 5 3-pointers, it wasn't a fair catch. So meaning
they're going to be ready tonight.
Yes. So this is going to be a very competitive game, and one that I'm not saying it's not must win, but it's, hey, you want to go out and compete,
Yeah, no doubt. Then it continues to open eyes, and you're like, okay, you're building momentum, you're building confidence, you're realizing what people thought you could be if the pieces came together. For me, the key piece recently, Scott, is Aaliyah Guyton. Mm-hmm. And I need more Aaliyah Guyton when I'm watching Iowa women's basketball. She's a true point guard, and she shoots the ball a heck of a lot better than I thought she did getting here before she got here. She's got big time star potential, and you don't want to overdo it because she's a freshman. You don't want to put too much pressure over her, especially like in a game tonight on the road. You want to be cognizant of that. But I think she is the person that needs to have the ball in her hands. That's no offense to Sid, no offense to Lucy. I think you saw what she kind of dressed down Juju a little bit with the behind the back pass. Yeah. She is a difference maker at point guard. And I don't know how the dynamic will work with Addie Deal when she gets here. But the thought of those two playing together in the backcourt has to have Iowa fans pretty excited.
Yeah. And I think one thing that was telling for me the other day was Aaliyah, that was maybe her worst game, shooting wise for sure.
Yeah,
And she really struggled, yet Iowa overcame that, because she's been a very big spark for this team. She's come up with a three here, and I think she can. You're seeing her kind of morph into it, but it's still kind of the you can't. It's going to take a little time for her to be a true point guard. I think she is more than capable of being a legit point guard in this league, a Kiki Rice type, just leading, doing everything there. And I think Addie Deal, I don't know that she's as much of a point guard as she is just a guard who
yeah,
can run point. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you got two, great ball handlers, but she's a different type of player, Leah Guyton is. And I want to see more of her, sure. But I also say this, that if Lucy Olson can continue to play the way she played in the second half against USC with that kind of consistency, that kind of aggressiveness. I think she was timid sometimes in the past, and her confidence, excuse me, was waning. But the way she was aggressive there, if you can get a good Aaliyah Guyton and a Lucy Olson building off that last performance, then I think you've got something. You're peaking at the right time of the year, and now Monday, going to Nebraska, that is their designated rivalry now. I mean, because the Big Ten, you have 18 women's games.
yeah,
You play everybody once and you play one team twice. It's Nebraska. It makes sense. It does. I
yep,
know there's older rivalries and there's ones that you've built over time, but Wisconsin's been horrific. I don't even
yeah,
know how they keep Sarah Williams there, or, the way she's so good. Minnesota, so, but Nebraska, the way that they battled over the last few years, the loss over there, the Big Ten tournament, come from behind win, and they provide a different test. Whereas the turnovers and sharing the basketball are a big deal against Minnesota. When you look at Nebraska, they're an elite 3-point shooting team, in which they did totally against Iowa in the game here that went into overtime and they won. Early on, Britt Prince couldn't miss. I mean, she was unbelievable. And they lead the Big Ten with more than 8 3-pointers a game. They're second in 3-point percentage, and Iowa is last in 3-point defense, significantly last. So that to me is, whereas they're bad in turnover margin and they're going up against the team in Minnesota that values the basketball, how they defend the three at Lincoln is going to tell you if they're capable of winning. And going into this, I think they're capable of winning both games. They're probably capable of losing both games, probably most likely to get a split. But that said, you don't go into it thinking that way. You go into it saying, we minimize our mistakes. We defend well against Minnesota. We make our shots. We win. You go into Nebraska, we defend the three. We know Alexis Murkowski was in foul trouble in the first game. She's going to probably have a better game in the second game. We know that Britt Prince was off the charts in the first half as a 3-point shooter. We've got to defend the three a lot better this time around, which means Kylie Feuerbach, who I thought was tremendous defensively against Juju Watkins in a lot of cases and just everybody, you may have to give up some offense to play. But I think they're more than capable of winning both games. And if they do, then you're at 5-game winning streak and you're really surging towards where you want to be in the end.
Here's what's a bad matchup for Iowa, and they got away with it the other day when USC started the press.
Yes.
Iowa's not good at breaking the press. We saw it against Tennessee.
Yeah.
And Aaliyah struggled with shooting the other day, and she had 4 turnovers. But basically, it got to the point, Scott, where she was the press break.
Mm-hmm.
She inbounded the ball. They got the ball back to her. She broke the press. And that's one of the dynamics that she brings. She's a little bit more straight ball handler and good with the ball in her hands and fast. And she can get by a trap, get out of a trap, things like that. So That's something to keep an eye on too. I don't know. You have the numbers in front of you. What Nebraska's not really a press team. I don't know if Minnesota is, but moving forward, teams that can press are going to press Iowa, and that's something they need to figure out and be better at.
Yeah, it's happened repeatedly now. I
Yeah.
mean, I think Oregon was the way that
Yeah.
Oregon got back in the game. Iowa started what 11-0 or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
lost by a point because they couldn't figure that out, and then they just couldn't hit shots at the end, and so that's something that they're more than capable of doing negatively. And Lucy is, can be very good with the ball. She can also be very turnover prone.
Yeah.
And Leah, had a lot of turnovers the other day, but is the quickest, fastest player there. She kind of reminds me, she's kind of the women's basketball version of Braden Smith, who at a high level
Yes.
for Purdue.
Yeah.
We can talk about in a few minutes, I suppose. Um, but anyway, if you get those two on the floor, maybe Kylie Feuerbach, the one thing that still kind of bugs me about Iowa is that a lot of times they're not very good at moving without the basketball, especially in
Yeah.
sport. And breaking the press is one thing where sometimes you're like, where are you? And you could hear people going, visibly like, move. And then other times you'll see somebody get kind of D'd up in half court and everybody's still just kind of standing around. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, let's do something here. So that to me is something that's got to continue to grow. But it overall it did provide a tremendous moment. And as of these numbers on Monday night, they may have changed a little bit. Here's kind of, they've got the reverse of the men, and I'll explain that in a little while. But their home schedule is, other than UCLA, is conducive for them getting to the tournament because they're wins. Rutgers and Wisconsin. The road is tougher, obviously, because you're facing four teams that probably go to the NCAA tournament, in Minnesota, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Michigan. I say three of them they should be competitive with. Ohio State, to me, is probably a team that's not going to be a very.
They are. That one is circled for Ohio State. You can bet your ass that.
It is for sure, 100%. Me and Cam, our Ohio State writer, it's funny, we cover the football games. I was there for the Tennessee game. I was there at the Rose Bowl, cover that, and we end up talking women's basketball, just kind of who we are, And Cam was, and he's like, "Oh, they hate Iowa. They absolutely hate Iowa," and it's understandable. I mean, Iowa has been up here digging at them. I mean, last year they won Ohio State won the league regular season crown, but then Iowa beat them in the finale, and just some tough stuff. They got teed up, and
A lot of
so
history there, man, all the way back to the Katie Smith days
yeah,
and the fire marshal coming to Carver. So
exactly.
long history.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's good stuff.
Rivalries are the lifeblood of sport, and it's healthy and organic. So that's going to be on President's Day at 11 o'clock on Fox. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, I know some people are like, really? But yeah, why not? They do that on MLK Day. I think you can do that on President's Day, and gives content in the middle of a work day. Heck yeah, we'll take it.
Grid stage. Yeah, you take those stages when you can get them, no doubt about it. Probably should take a break here, and then we'll come back and talk a little men's basketball, what we saw in State College on Friday night, and whatever else may come up. Let you know that support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. We'll be back in a minute with more Hawk Talk. Hang in there. I think I drank too much coffee today. A little jumpy at this point, a little frayed. Okay, folks, switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Chad Birch right here in Iowa can switch you over so you can start saving today. Chad and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Chad Birch, it's easy to switch and save. Just give him a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Black Angel Restaurant, downtown Iowa City. Perez Brothers, owned and operated. You'll remember them maybe from El Banditos and Perez Tacos. Good food, live music on the weekends. Check them out. Black Angel Restaurant, downtown Iowa City. Scott, we had to get to this point eventually. It's not all flowers and rainbows here in Hawkeye country. Where should we start? Let's start with the men's basketball team.
Yeah.
You were there on Tuesday night. Great effort against Purdue. Some layers to this. We've got the news that Owen Freeman is out for the regular season, or out for the rest of the season, excuse me. Whatever that means, it may only be the regular season at this rate. We'll see if there is a postseason, either the Big Ten tournament or, obviously that would be the end of the road. But we're not there yet, and that was a spirited effort on Tuesday, and you hope they can keep bringing that. And it's going to take that on Saturday when Wisconsin comes to town. Noon, NBC, national TV. I don't know what the crowd will be like. I talked to somebody about that this morning. I'm like, I have no idea because it's not been good. If you can't get people to Carver for a noon Saturday, Wisconsin nationally televised game, I think this is going to be telling on Saturday, Scott, from an attendance standpoint, and then also from a basketball standpoint. Where is this team? That was a tough loss the other night with a really good effort. Can you do it again, and can you finish this time?
Yeah. Lot to think about there. I do want to give them a little bit of flowers here on their performance the other day. And I know there's no moral victory, certainly not in the Big Ten, but to have the Owen Freeman news and to have a lot of things against them. I mean, now the first place team in the Big Ten, number 7 team in the country, coming in Purdue, team that historically, other than the Big Ten tournament win a few years ago, it's been really tough to play against this team with Matt Painter. They just kind of had Iowa's number. To put that forth, that kind of effort, and could, whether it was in the first half, leading throughout, putting the pressure on them to get, kind of their early third quarter was what the women's second quarter was, or early second half is kind of like the, that 5-minute spurt there was just an abomination to start the second half. But then to fight their way to a 3-point game within a possession or two there in the last couple of minutes, and ultimately lose by 9. I think it showed a lot of heart. I think it showed a lot of character. I think these players still play hard. They have a lot of pride. They want to compete. They want to compete against the best, and they did. I'm not going to give them moral victories and all that, but I think you got to admire the effort, knowing everything that's against them right now. That being said, this is not a very good basketball team across the board. And this Saturday will be telling for a lot of reasons, because it does set the tone for the rest of the year. I mean, they're sitting right now, they're 65 in the net. You could just pretty much forget the NCAA tournament unless they win 5 straight, which I don't think they're capable of doing, even against.
It's hard to do that. It's hard for anybody to do that in this league, especially when you're shorthanded.
Yeah. They're 4-7, they're 3-9, 13-9. So, and the rest of the schedule is daunting at best. It's very difficult. So, going into this week before we got the Owen Freeman news, I thought, well, Purdue might be a tough one, but maybe Wisconsin, after the way they played up there, they've got a lot of pride. They'll flex their rivalry muscles. It's Saturday, Carver. I think there might be a decent crowd. I kind of think that they might get a decent crowd for this one because of the factors you said, and weather shouldn't be an issue. So if you're
no football,
no football, nothing, you're not even a playoff game,
nothing.
The Super Bowl's the next day. So you've got all of those factors in their favor. People still like the colors in the jerseys. So I kind of think that they'll have a decent crowd. I don't know if it'll be a sellout, but and I'm sure there'll be a lot of Wisconsin fans too.
Oh yeah.
But maybe in the 12,000 range. I know that's not great, but it's still way better than what they had certainly the other day against Purdue, where the Purdue contingent was vocal. And they listed about 80, what, how many was the pitch? It was 80 four that were there, about half full. And then it was probably more like a third full, man, maybe a little north of a third.
Yeah, for
Um,
people that don't know and look at those box scores, the attendance you see on there are tickets sold.
yeah. So, it wasn't quite 84, but it wasn't like 5. It was more like 65 or 7. So I think a lot of people use their tickets. It's just still, we know where this is headed, where this is going to go, and this isn't going to be a very good finish. They're struggling, but they're due for at least one more big moment this season. And can it be Saturday? Can they put everything aside and just say, we were embarrassed by how we played at Wisconsin the first time and giving up a Big Ten record, 21 3-pointers and 116 points, the most ever for Wisconsin in a Big Ten game. We're going to go out and play good defense and compete, or is it just going to be too much and they don't have enough in the post, which is perfectly understandable. I don't know what we're going to get, but it's either way. This is an opportunity for them to kind of showcase that they still have that pride and they're still working hard.
I think they have two of the better players in the Big Ten when they play well, still on their roster in Peyton Sanford and
Yeah.
Josh Dix. And those guys stepped up the other night in Owen Freeman's absence. They have to continue to do that. They both have had, really great moments and moments this year where you're like, yeah, this is all Big Ten. And then there's a drop off, whether it be within a game or game to game. And they can't do that now without Owen Freeman. There is no margin for error. Those two guys have to carry this team, and the other guys, Drew Thelwell can obviously do a lot too, and I think there are other guys on this roster that can contribute, but those two guys really have to carry the load here, and I don't see there's any other way around it. Those two guys have to be the guys that carry this team.
They have to have what, the ultimate green light, which is
Yeah.
if you feel like you got a shot, shoot it, and sometimes that's good and bad. I mean, they're streaky when they're on. I mean, like the Nebraska game, Peyton Sanford was on fire, and he has been in his career at certain times. And I expect him to, have a couple more of these at some point. That whether that results in victories or not, I don't know. But they're the two that really have to, stir the drink here. And I think the other factor, as you mentioned with Thelwell, what I always like about him is he's really into it. He
Yeah.
is an emotional player, energizing player. Early on he had a couple shots, and then he went over to like the scorers table. He's just like this, and
He's trying to get everybody into it.
yeah, and they were. I'll
Yeah.
say this: the crowd was pretty good Tuesday night for all things considered, and they tried, and now we can poo-poo the attendance, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, and we will again in a couple weeks when they're playing Washington, at home, and that's going to be, same type of deal. But this specific matchup, it's what scares me about Iowa, is the obvious here. They're last in field goal defense. They're last in scoring defense, and worst of all, even worse than the others, because you could kind of overcome them, is the rebound margin. And where they are right now, Rob, is they're at minus 543 rebounds per game, which is by far 18th in the league. 17th is Minnesota at 0.91. So there is a bigger discrepancy between or minus 0.91. There's a bigger discrepancy between teams 14 and or between 17 and 18 than there is 4 and 14 when it comes to that. And this is going to get so much worse without Freeman. That's with Freeman.
Yeah.
Now you don't have Freeman. So teams are just going to run the football in a post, and they're not going to be able to stop them. And so that means your shooters are going to have to get streaky. You're going to have to But let me ask you this, Rob. If you're Fran strategically here, do you say, all right, we're just going to have to fill in best we can and do what we can in the post with Sadu or with take your pick on anybody else there. Riley Mulvey, who I thought played admirably the other day. Evan Bronze played hard. Or do you just say, you know what? They're gonna get their points there. Let's blitz basically. Let's use football here. Let's just run high tempo, blitz, press. And if they get past us, they get past us, and maybe we get lucky, they miss a shot. You go for the traditional method of trying to play in the half court, or you just say, we're just gonna run and gun and see what happens.
Fran was actually asked about this the other day, I think, and he gave kind of a non-answer answer. It depends on matchups, but I kind of agree with him. If you can take advantage of a small lineup,
Yeah,
go for it.
yeah,
But don't be married to that. If it's not working, you got to be able to with it what he has now. And I don't think the absence of Cooper Koch. I know it's not a huge deal, but he was a pretty highly regarded recruit that could have contributed to this
oh yeah,
team.
sure.
Without him and Owen Freeman, now you're really, trying to put the pieces together and figure out what works. And you have really little margin for error. So, like you said, if Evan Bruns is, if he's on a heater, play him. Riley Mulvey's got a matchup that he's working and it's taking advantage of it, do it. But if it's better to go small and you have a lumbering big man on the other team or somebody that can't keep up with your speed, exploit that too. I think ultimately, Scott, it's going to take, usually in these situations, it takes better coaching.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take here. You have to push the right buttons because there aren't as many buttons to push.
Exactly. And then that's the sad, scary part here is I just don't know if they have it. And and part of it is, Rob, that a couple of players you were expecting to really take a step forward. I would say Dembele being one, maybe Traore, Taggio, Chris Taggio. I mean, guys that you thought would be at worst quality rotational guys, if not, certainly valuable contributors, just haven't been either consistent or good enough to get in there and do that. And so you're just continuously wounded then in the post.
Yeah.
You just, and you were that way before, even when Freeman was there. And now you're just doubly so. And the one thing about this lineup too is you have two of the better, probably 20 best players, 15 best players in the Big Ten in Dix and Sanford. If they were on Purdue, they would be better with them than even some of their players or Illinois or whoever. But Thelwell is a guy that's he's more of a strength than a weakness, but he's a good player to have. Harding is kind of inconsistent. He's up and down. He's good at times. I think he's very, very quick. I think he dribbles too much, but I also think that he doesn't get the chance to use his full talent because of the post situation, which I think if he was able to be more of a facilitator in the paint, if they had Freeman and a Cooper Koch available to him, he would be much better in that situation. But so you got him. Price Sanford is decent when it comes to filling minutes. I think he's probably been the best bench player this year. But beyond that, I'm just looking at this team and I'm like, the guys that needed to step up haven't really done it. And now you're down one of your best players, your best player. I think he's your best player in Owen Freeman.
Yeah. And obviously that's the now and kind of what things look like in the near future. But as Scott kind of referenced, we'll see what this means for the future of the program beyond this season. Because you talk about the attendance, you talk about not having Owen Freeman, so the results are not going to probably be obviously what they would be with him. But now your chances of, making the Big Ten tournament and making a postseason tournament go down. And then that takes you to what do you do after this season in terms of the program, whether that be the head coach. Beth has talked about, changes at Carver. We've talked about on this podcast, something has to change here. I'm not in charge of what it is. I think you ask yourself, if you're Beth, if you're wondering what to do with this program, can Fran get the fans back in the arena? Him running the program, is that going to be tenable moving forward?
Yeah.
Can they get back to where they were when things were going the best when Fran was here and beyond? You have to ask yourself that. Then you have to ask yourself, if we're going to make a change or keep Fran, what can we do to support this program, to give it more resources, to make the experience for fans at the games better? All of these things, and there's more, but we've gone over it time and time again on this, Scott, on the podcast. We know it needs to be addressed, but it feels like we're kind of barreling towards something big here.
Yeah, we are. I think, you're right. You have to keep the North Star as it's not just about the play on the field, on this court. It's a business. College, it's the Big Ten. It's big boy.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing that you always refer to the field because you're a football guy.
I know. It's almost over, Rob, and we're gonna miss football for 6
I know. I sympathize with the withdrawal that you'll go through. But the draft will be here. The combine and draft will be here before you know.
I know, and I'm going to be at the combine for a full week. But so then I'll get my little fix at the end of the month and then be on the draft duty and spring football. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, there's plenty.
Yeah,
football never sleeps.
No, it does not. On the field. No, on the court, it matters. Of course, it matters because if the results aren't there, fans aren't going to come. Except if you're Nebraska, but that's only in the tickets, not the actual bodies in the stadium. What Beth and the bean counters have to do is the North Star is, can Fran energize the base to bring it back to the arena? We know the answer to that. I don't want to dwell too much into that answer, but a cultural change is needed. He's not done anything to me on the floor that says it's time to move on. I think that the program is a healthy one in the sport. They've competed. Now, of course, the Sweet 16 matters. Not getting there, of course, not getting a Big Ten championship or advancing into the second weekend and beyond when you have all that talent. Yes, all that matters. It's part of it's a giant piece of the mosaic that is Iowa men's basketball.
I think it's part of the reason why you don't have as strong a fan base is because every March, your fans are, they're done with their bracket after the first weekend.
Exactly. And it's just been this, you can kind of see the rise and then the drop. And there's been noticeable drops for Fran. The 16 season, I think, was one where you had Utah and you were 10-1 in the Big Ten, and it looked like, wow, you're going to finally get there. You're going to finally win our Big Ten regular season title since '79, and then 2-6 finish. And then it was like, yeah, you played Villanova, they won the championship, but you shouldn't have played Villanova anyway.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have been a 7 seed. You had a tournament, and you had the second round in Des Moines, and then you had one in St. Louis, and instead you go to Brooklyn. And it's like, that's what you need to think about. I mean, Wisconsin was a 7 seed and went to St. Louis that year. Anyway, then you look at kind of the more modern times when you've had Luka Garza and the Murray brothers and Jordan Bohannon and Joe Wieskamp, and you haven't been able to get it done in the postseason. And the problems are perpetual. It's Oregon, you're a 2, they're a 7, and they scored 95 on you because you can't stop the dribble drive. And none of your starting guards, I think, you had any points. So you're just like, this is something we all recognize. This has been a problem. Nothing has been done to address it, to fix it. Not stylistically, not schematically. really not even in personnel. You haven't said, you know what, we're going to go out and get a defensive stopper. He's going to kick ass for us. And then the 1 year where they do win the Big Ten tournament, and there was a noticeable surge when you do have Keegan Murray, and they were like 25-8, and they made it, they were a 5 seed, but they're pretty much underseeded, I think, at that year. And they win the Big Ten tournament, 4 games in 4 days, and everything was surging. And then you lose a 5-12 game to Richmond. And it's like, this is why, I can just tell you now, this is what people say. This is why I don't really care, because this is what happens. I start to get excited and then it's gone. And that's cultural. It's embedded to the fabric of Iowa fandom. And you can't really reverse that. You just can't. And, Fran's personality he's not the car salesman that a lot of college basketball coaches are, where, okay, well, we're going to go out and rally the base. I'm going to go out here and hand out free tickets to the Coral Ridge Mall on Saturday and come meet the team and shake our hands and rah, rah, let's go Hawks and stuff. He's just not that way. And that works probably in the markets where he's born, Philly or New York or whatever. It's not the way it's done here. That's been successfully done here, where you have a Lisa Bluter or, even Kirk is much more outgoing with the public in those types of situations. So I think what we're barreling towards is probably change. Hopefully the change comes with a way out. Because again, I don't think Fran has done anything on the floor that merits getting fired. But stepping down to spend more time with your family now that Jack is graduating and going to Butler, and I want to be at more of his games like I was with Connor and Patrick, and watching my son coach, and then maybe getting over to Europe or wherever when Patrick goes pro, with a $3 million+ golden parachute. I think that's fair. And then time will kind of heal those wounds. In 5 years or whatever, Iowa inducts him into the Hall of Fame as the winningest coach. Maybe he feels more respect, because I know, I haven't talked to him about it because I don't talk to him about anything, but I'm sure he doesn't feel appreciated here, because it is a tough job, and we know that. And I just went through, Rob, last night. I have 16 schools, all the public schools season or ticket sale numbers from last year, and Iowa is 7 times lower than Indiana and almost 5 times lower than Illinois in ticket sales from last year. We talked about it last week that they're below the women. Iowa, out of the public schools, is 12th last year, and it's going to be worse this year. So, I'm sure it's time for a change. That's pretty obvious. The other factor, and I don't want to drain on too long, is I know there's a fear, probably among fans our age, maybe those older, of, yeah, well, we saw this once before with Tom Davis, and we know how that ended up. That's a different era. The fan base.
Time ago, man.
Yeah.
That is a long time ago. A lot has changed
That's
in the
26 years ago.
world and college athletics.
Mm-hmm. We were worried about Y2K back then.
Yes, we're done.
Now we're 25 years past.
Computers are down.
Yeah. That's different to me, because even though you look at their resumes, they're really comparable, other than Tom Davis walked in the greatest situation in Iowa basketball history as a new coach, and Fran walked in the worst, no question. But outside of, you take those first 2 years off and look at the rest of it, they're pretty similar. Tom, though, resonated with the fan base. There was an angry, you remember this, I'm sure, very well, being at the PC at the time, and I do at Muscatine. There was a loud undercurrent about recruiting and losing Rafe LaFrentz and everything. And
I think the relationship was strained by the end between Tom and the fan base and the administration there. I think that's fair.
And, the administrator was Bob Bowlesby, who's much more powerful, tougher, And, he told me a few years ago when I wrote it that he's like, that people were ready to move on, and we weren't doing as well. Well, now it'd be great, you know, but there wasn't apathy there. And when Licklider left, it was waning towards that, but it was more anger than apathy. It was people staying away.
People were shocked at what they were watching, I
Yeah.
think. They were
Right.
like, whoa, what era is this? 30 to
Yeah.
5?
Yes, there were a few of those. I'll never forget. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Wisconsin or Purdue, and both of them were the same way. It was like 40 to 16 with 6 minutes, 16
Yeah.
minutes left in the game. And so I think people stayed away because they were bored to tears, and it wasn't a very good team. It was like, I'm not paying for that. But they were more angry about the
Yeah.
way the state of the program was. Now it's more apathetic. It's like this team, there's no comparison with the Licklider era to now. This team is way better today. I mean, just miles better, even now at their worst moment. And they're going to have a bad streak to end this season. It's just obvious. But it's still so much better than it was with Licklider.
Yeah.
And Fran is a better coach, clearly a better coach. But the fans have tapped out. They just have. And as we said, administratively, they haven't supported the program very well for a long time. You mentioned Alford, not today, but just in the past, because I know you're not supposed to mention his name. But just saying, it's complaining about being a football school that they didn't support it back then. There's some truth to that. Back then, you didn't have as much money, and football had skyrocketed when he became an asshole. Because when he came and Kirk came, he was the rock star, and everything got sold out for that first season. And then,
If you remember, Bowlesby said we got the guy we wanted.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That was after the hiring of Ferentz, where there was some question whether or not they got the guy they wanted.
Right. And people wanted Bob Stoops, and
yeah,
piddled around. So, I think the basketball school is part, or the football school is part of it. They need to do more. Money is going to be a factor, both for the coaching staff, but also in NIL and how the school pays for it. All that's going to be a factor here. But ultimately, I think a fresh start is not the worst thing for this program. Fresh evaluation. It's not a death sentence the way it was, with the transfer portal. I mean, just look 2 hours west. I mean, they were 0-18 during that COVID year. They were horrible. And they've been to 2 out of the last 3 Sweet 16s. And they're a top 10 team almost every week this year. So it's possible. I just think, I don't know. I said a lot, Rob.
Here's where I am on this. We talked about it. This program needs to come into this era. It needs to be more engaged with fans. It needs all of those things. Social media, from the players, the coaches, they have to interact with fans more than they're doing. I don't know what to do with Fran. As you said, I don't think we're at a period where the program's performance on the court is fire-worthy, for lack of a better term. I think you look at the recruiting class, some of the guys that are in the program that you would have back, there's a good foundation here that way. But whether it's Fran and you decide to keep him, or you hire somebody else, that has to change how you interact with fans, whether you put together scrimmages or barnstorming tours, or Scott's talked about a lot of these ideas too. You've got to change what you're doing with men's basketball to get people engaged. It's not just rolling the ball out there. The chances of you being Michigan State or Illinois or wherever with consistent winning that draws people back, you can't wait for that. You have to do something now. Now, that's up to Beth. Is it Fran? You go to Fran and you say, what do you think gets the people back? Go to him, get his ideas, share your ideas, say, this is what I think. I'm a modern day athletic director. I see what's going on at other schools. I see how they engage their fan bases, how we want to do it, have my own ideas. Are you with us on that? Do you want to do that? Are you going to be okay in June or July going to Sioux City and doing a rubber chicken tour or something like that, or some type of exhibition game, and getting us out there. Getting us out there. We don't have prime time. We don't have shirts and skins. Can you do that?
Mhm.
And then see how that conversation goes, and gauged how interested in Fran and how much energy he would have into doing that. You changed the offensive coordinator for football because your offense was off. At some point, do you go to Fran and say, listen, we need somebody to teach defense. We need a guy or a girl or whoever, sorry,
Yeah.
to work with you and mesh with you, your offensive philosophy with a good defensive philosophy to have a strong program on both ends of the floor. Do that.
Mhm.
These are things that have to be done now.
Mhm.
That it's worked to the point now where there aren't people showing up to games. You got to fix it. And however that is, you have the all-time winningest coach. Have to massage this a little bit. If we get to the point where, as Scott said, you come to the point where you feel like Fran is not the person to bring this program forward, then how do you solve that? What are the discussions like in terms of a buyout? How much is he going to want? How willing will he be to do that? And then, oh, by the way, and this is a little bit sensationalistic, his son is in a relationship with one with, as we said earlier, the greatest athlete in the history of your program. Do you want to get on the wrong side of this family? I don't know what the future is with Connor and Caitlyn, but I wouldn't just ignore that. And but I don't think you want to have a bad relationship with your all-time winningest
No, you
coach
don't.
anyway.
Right.
So all of those factors, and you saw what happened when you got on the wrong side
Mhm.
of that in the documentary, right?
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as well. But however you approach this, Scott, you can't keep going like this, and significant changes need to be made, whether Fran stays or goes.
Yeah, you're right. And I get back to the one thing that just keeps coming to my mind is it's cultural and it's a business. The play on the floor will happen, no matter who's there, and you'll survive that. Whether it's you go hire Darren DeVries or you hire Becky Hammond,
Yeah.
which would be completely off the charts in interest. I think you would really shock value the world if it's something like that. But it's after 16 years. We've said this about Kirk before, but Kirk has been more amenable to change, you know, especially since, the only one that he was so obstinate about was his son as the offensive coordinator. And that was a bad situation too. But Fran hasn't changed anything. He plays the same way today that he did the day he walked in the door. The recruits are the recruits, and he's had good players, and they've won nice games and everything like that. But I just think that it for somebody of his age, I think he's 65 now, to play the way he's played, he's seen the trajectory of the program and hasn't really done anything. And the fact that if nothing else, the optics of Patrick leaving, I understand it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you just gotta. Sometimes it's just time to move on, and you want to experience something new in life. He's young, go do it. Um, but Jack deciding not to play here for you, even though understandable, but the optics are everything here. The optics of the arena where you have 6,000 people for the number 7 team in the country that you've played for 100 years. That's not a rivalry, but it's a pretty damn good series. And it's one that, I think both sides have always been keen on.
Mhm.
You see that the other day. I just don't know that you can just say, you know what, we're going to bring back the gang again and hope for better. And will Fran make those changes? Will he suddenly go out in public? Well, we've seen it over the last few years. He should have been doing that anyway. He should have noticed the direction of the program, and instead, nothing. Okay, I do my radio show. That's pretty much it. But I agree, obviously, that being the winningest coach, while not be loved, you don't want to completely ruin that relationship forever. You want to handle this delicately. You want him to save face. You
Took
want
Dr.
him.
Time a while to come back.
Yeah, I did. And then I remember him being inducted in the Hall of Fame. I think it was 2007 or 2008. And he stood there at halftime of that football game just in tears because he got a great standing ovation. That's something that Fran would experience in 5 years.
And everybody should want.
Exactly. You should, if they can come to a fair agreement, it's going to cost you. I wouldn't think that Iowa would accept, we'll pay the whole thing. I don't think that's quite fair for Iowa. But getting majority of it, I think would be fair. And he gets to step away, dignity intact, go coach go watch your son play, be able to take a trip to Europe once or twice to watch Patrick play. As I think that's probably where he's headed, and watch Connor coach.
Jack and Connor both on the Butler team. So,
yeah.
Caitlin's playing down there. There's a lot of reasons to be down there.
Exactly. That would be, but it's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my life's career. He may still have that passion and want to do it. And, hell, who knows, maybe want to do it somewhere else. But that to me kind of spills it out that I guess ultimately I would be surprised if he comes back, because we know what the rest of the season's going to hold. I mean, without Owen Freeman, yes, you're playing Wisconsin. Maybe you get that. Going to Rutgers with those two players now back, with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Maryland is really good.
Especially at home.
Yeah. And then Oregon at home. Oregon's slumping really badly. I mean, they lost 4 straight, but they're still an NCAA tournament team.
Talented team.
Yeah. Washington, to me, feels like that's the win of this group. They should have beaten Nebraska last night, but Nebraska came back and smoked their ass in the second half. Going to Illinois, good teams die there, let alone bad teams. Northwestern, they finish their final 2 road trips are Northwestern and Nebraska, which are in their neighborhood. They obviously beat both at home. Now they're on the road. Those are 2 games that'll determine whether you even make it to Indianapolis or not.
Yep.
And
yeah, for those folks that don't know, only the top 15 make it to the Big Ten tournament now. The bottom 3 do not. So Iowa needs to stay out of 16, 17, 18 in the standings if it wants to be able to shoot its shot in Indianapolis, make a run to the tournament championship. That would probably be like winning 10 games in 10 days or something now.
Yeah.
With the amount of teams in these tournaments, they're going to be. I remember when it used to just be the Big East that played like an entire week. Now everybody's going to be doing that.
Yeah, right. I'm glad they cut off the final 3, though. I mean,
yeah,
there's no need for Washington's 2-9, and so and it's going to come down to one of those games probably. I mean, Nebraska's now 5-7. They're surging after they were 2-7. Now they won 3 straight. Northwestern's 4-8. They lost their best scorer too.
Yeah.
It very well could come down to that game as to who makes it to Indy, whether you're 15 or 16. And let's face it, being 15th in the Big Ten last year, there were 14 teams. It's not exactly like you won a prize. It's not like you deserve a merit badge or something, So in some ways, you almost want to say, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I think it is for your younger players to experience that. You don't want to, you want to finish the best you can finish, but I think you would agree, Scott, no matter what happens here at the rest of the season, whether they win, whether they go on a run, which could happen, and they do, surprise people, and it's a really good finish, and people are juiced up about it, and people are coming back to Carver a little bit more. Fool's gold, man. That is not a fix.
Mm-hmm.
It's no matter what happens the rest of the season, everything we've discussed needs to be addressed for this program to move forward.
And you'd also need to look at non-conference scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have any problem if they take one game per year and go A to the Quad Cities, or B to Sioux Falls, or Kansas City, or Des Moines.
You know what, man? Screw that. Play UNI and Drake again. home and home. Just play the damn in-state series again. I don't want to hear excuses.
I agree. I want to play that. I think it's healthy. It's good for the sport. It's good for the state.
You took it away. What did you give us? You
Exactly.
took those games away. What do we have in December?
Nothing.
One game in
Yeah.
our arena every other year against an in-state opponent.
Hmm.
And you
Exactly.
wonder why the fans aren't engaged?
Yeah. That's where it all starts. You start to pull away things. And I've learned this a long time ago in the newspaper business, which was, hey, we want to stop doing this. Okay, what are you going to replace it with?
Exactly.
Because you've got to tell people that, okay, we're taking this away, but we're going to be better here. And you look at men's basketball, we're taking away the PTL, which was the greatest free publicity you'll ever get for any of your programs.
At a pretty minimal it's not like it was changing your life. It was a couple hours a week.
Right. It was a Wednesday night and a Sunday afternoon, and you had hundreds of people, 400 people, a lot of times, piling into the North Liberty gyms to watch your guys compete. You'd have, I don't know, 7, 10 reporters there writing stories, shooting videos. You'd have segments on TV, you'd have bits online. We'd be talking about it, what they look like.
Yep.
Fans could get autographs, fans could shake hands, stuff like that. You had
now you go away in March and we don't see you again till when? There's nothing in the summer. There's no Midnight Madness.
Right.
No shirts and skins in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
How are you keeping your fans engaged?
Exactly. You're not. And then you look at the shirts and skins. Yes, it was in hot Carver Hawkeye Arena for those 11 o'clock September games. So what? A couple thousand people milling around, watching some of the workouts. They want verification. It's like,
I think I mentioned this before. I have a photo of OG Anunoby from Shirts and Skins visiting him and other recruits.
Exactly.
Again, so that's good for recruiting too.
Right. You've got them in there. Now they're having their own little private workouts in the practice gym. All right. So you're taking that away. What are you giving them? There was that Midnight Madness thing they did a couple of years, which was really fun. I remember one of the years, there was probably close to 10,000 people there on a Friday night in the fall with Friday night football and everything. You're inviting people to take a look, to buy tickets, to relate to the teams. That's gone.
We should mention that they do something downtown.
Yes, they do.
In the fall once school starts up to get people engaged. So that is something that, but more of that. We need more of that.
Yeah, you can do more than one.
Yeah.
You could do that during homecoming week like they do at the downtown area. That's cool. But, you might want to invite people to your house. You talk about the in-state series. Fran hated it, and in fact, I remember when it first got shut down, or when the Big Four got shut down, and he said, I'm indifferent to it. Well, that's kind of, people are indifferent to your program right now. And those series, those games, yes, they were tough. And yes, they were costly if you lost, but they introduced the team to all the people in the state, because Iowa State fans would watch Iowa play UNI. UNI has several players we know from the state, from the Mississippi Valley Conference. And we'd have, somebody from, Josh Morgan. Am I right?
Jeremy?
Jeremy. God damn it. Yeah, Jeremy Morgan. You'd have him playing, against Iowa.
Wyatt
Lowhouse. And you'd have those guys playing against Iowa, home and away. And it was great surroundings and theater. And okay, you didn't want that. They struck a compromise to play in Des Moines. That was okay. It was kind of a flat champagne. And then you get rid of that because, well, we're going to 20 games and we can, so we will. But then he says, well, then we can go play Cincinnati in this one-off in Chicago at the United Center. Okay, but you're taking something away from the fans who pay your salary, who go to your games. They're not going to drive to Chicago, not all of them. And
even now the ACC challenge is gone, so you don't have that.
And really, who cares about the Gavitt games against the Big East? I mean, those teams you're playing St. John's. Okay, Rick Pitino, maybe that's cool. Seton
maybe
Hall.
Marquette.
Yeah, but
Maybe
still,
Marquette, but yeah,
you know,
that's a stretch.
mhm. The good thing is, and I'll be there in a couple weeks, the Big Ten SEC Summit Part 2 in New Orleans. There will be more SEC Big Ten games, basketball,
That's good.
you
That
know,
will be good for everybody.
so, maybe it'll be its own challenge.
Mhm.
They're talking about exempt tournaments possibly going away and having their own so they can keep the money. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of going to the Bahamas and paying $100,000 so you can stay at Paradise Island and play 3 games. It's like, well, why don't you go to Orlando and have Florida and Georgia play Iowa and Illinois in a weekend classic,
Yeah.
and we get to keep all the money. Good business sense, right?
Yep.
But all things told, yes, you're taking away the ACC Big Ten Challenge. You're taking away in-state games from your fans, and then you're moving games, 3 neutral site games, like Utah, Washington State, Utah State. Other than Iowa State, it's your best non-cons away from here.
Yeah.
One per year, maybe when the students are gone, like December 21st, and you want to go to the Quad Cities or you want to go to Sioux Falls. I got it. That's all right. But, why not bring in Washington State to Iowa City? That's like, oh, wow, Nate, Utah, home and home with Utah. Those are neutral site games, other than getting a paycheck from Sioux Falls, to me, are just, that they're bad for football, but they're worse for basketball. I just don't see the value in it.
Yes. And so again, wins or losses, whatever happens the rest of the season, fans come back to a degree because you get on a great winning streak. It's not a fix. This is deep. It needs to be addressed. All the things we've talked about. Just changing Fran isn't going to change what needs to be done with the program.
Yeah.
So if you're on the fire Fran train, what's your solution? It's kind of like Scott was saying, if you get rid of something, what are you replacing it with? And you will be replacing Fran with another coach, but then what are you giving that coach to succeed? And what type of coaches are you going to attract if you don't have what you need to get? Coaches aren't stupid. They know what they need to succeed. And if you give them, some band-aids and some rubber bands and say, hey, just, and I'm not, Iowa, the Big Ten, there are resources there. You just need to figure out how to best use them for your basketball program to get people back in. Because that ultimately is the goal, is to fix the apathy with this program right now. That is number one.
Right. And it's generational. It's not just something that happened because of Fran not, getting tapped out 5-12. It was on its way after the 3-14 bounce in 2006 because people didn't like Alford. They hated what happened with Pierre Pierce, and they struggled to resonate with the program then. And then it just continuously, there were steps along the way. Fran built it up nicely, but I'm also to that point of praising him for Licklider. I'm like, come on, look at TJ Otzelberger and what he did there. It was a 3-year turnaround, and they're in the, year after year they went to the Sweet 16. So I think there's some merit there. Overall, yes, Iowa does need to evaluate every single aspect of men's basketball, not leave one stone unturned, not say, well, that's okay. No, because even if it might be okay, it could be better. And I look at the environment, Rob, and I'm not just speaking to the 15,000 who were there for Caitlin Day or 6,000 that were there for Purdue. But things like music choices and video board is so different between the women and the men. The women's boards are going and constantly going, and the men are just like, it's, I don't know. I'm like, are the same people working here, or do the women have different people operating all this stuff? And social media, they were so good with the women's program all the way through the tournament. Now, granted, they're a great elite program and everybody resonated with them, but the men just are crickets, and I think they need to completely reevaluate it because, the women are fantastic and will be excited for a long, long time. They made, 3.2 million but 3.2 million even on the men's scale here would be let's see, it among Big Ten teams, it would be where Iowa men are 12th in the Big Ten. It just, you're not charging enough, and you're not going to charge enough because you don't want to hurt the people that have been paying minimal all those years. So you need men's basketball to be a financial winner for you, because Indiana made, last year Iowa made 2.96 million on tickets, and it's going to be worse this year. Indiana made 15.2 million in tickets. And if that's like, well, but that's Indiana. Okay. Illinois, a team that you historically is your biggest, most hated rival, made 9.36 million. Wisconsin, the team that used to be way beneath you, and now in the last 25 years has surpassed you and lapped you, almost 6.7 million in tickets. Iowa hasn't hit 4 since 2005, and now they're below 3. That is a bad trend. If you did that in football, you'd be dead in the water.
Good luck, Beth. We wish you the best. Obviously, a story that's going to continue here through the rest of the winter and into the spring, and we'll be back and we'll talk about it. We've kind of run this thing for like an hour and a half, so we're not going to get to wrestling or anything else. Iowa football did sign another recruit to the 2025 class, Jacob Wallace from DeMatha Catholic. I have a story on that on my feed if you want to go see it. But we'll talk more football and stuff moving forward too as we get into the spring and who might contribute in this 2025 class in the fall and all that good stuff. We got the combine Scott will be at, so we'll have plenty of football time. But like during football season, we say there'll be time to talk about basketball. It's basketball season, and that's why we spent the hour and a half talking about men's and women's basketball. I think important conversation. Hopefully you folks agree. Appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. What you doing on athletics, Scott? Anything good out there for folks to read?
Yeah, I hope so. I wrote today about
it's always good.
Yeah.
I mean more, is it interesting to Iowa fans?
Oh, Iowa fans. This one may not be as much. I wrote about the net rankings and how they and how they factor with the not only the tournament seeds but tournament seeding, what they mean, the quad one wins, how they parlay. And so I looked at like the tournament, like the first 4 out and the last 4 in. The last 3 years I compared like how did their nets turn out, and the interesting thing is the first 4 out actually had on average a higher net than the last 4 in. But the metrics that they apply, you can tell, are that they are stronger about quad one wins and the lack of 3-4 losses. So I looked through that, and then I kind of applied it. I looked at some other aspects, and then ultimately applied it to some games this weekend, Michigan and Indiana, and a few around the country as well. North Carolina, Pittsburgh, which is kind of that bubble game type of thing. And like Indiana has like 7 more quad one games. North Carolina and Pittsburgh only have 2, and then they have 2 quad 4s because their league is so bad at the bottom. Miami's horrible. So they've got that aspect, and so anyway, Iowa fans, probably not. Hope you read my column on Caitlyn Clark Day. That's what I wrote, and I'll start working on some other things. But
that's interesting to me, the net stuff. I think people get confused on all that talk about quad wins and what they mean. So certainly a roadmap on that is good, even if it's not, even if your team may not be on that road that's shown in the map, it will be someday. And it's good to know what those things are and what's important in terms of building a resume to make it to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so that's it matters when you start to see teams. It matters at every level. It's not just the bubble teams, which we all focus on. It's also, why did this team get I looked at the differences in net for like seeds 3 and 4, and how screwy sometimes it is. The 3 seeds are okay. Usually they're kind of in that ballpark for net, but the 4s, I mean, there have been teams that have had a net of 32 that have been a 4 seed.
Wow.
And it's like, well, how did this happen? So those are some aspects that I looked at, and yes, it doesn't really apply to, unfortunately, this year for the men's basketball at Iowa, and it does a little bit to the women. I would say I didn't focus on the women; I focused on the men, but that, and then going forward, I'll probably have a money story, and then I'm looking into some private equity stuff that I'm just really trying to catch up on and taking the Cliff's Notes version to know that I'm not completely stupid on this situation.
I hear you. Yeah, good stuff from Scott at the Athletic. Check that stuff out. Always subscribe to the Athletic, even if you're listening to us and you're not a huge Iowa fan. There's just great content on that website all over the place for any type of sport you're interested in. So check that out at theathletic.com. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, folks. Thanks to our sponsors. Special thanks. I want to people that did reach out of support this week that listened to my podcast the other day. Appreciate that. I've tried to get to you on social media. If I missed you, I apologize. I'll try to go back and get that. But we're moving forward, folks. What's behind us is behind us, and we're moving on. And we'll be back here next week on the Hotspot podcast to talk all about it. Until then, be well and have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. Say goodbye.